Welcome to this presentation titled Seeds of Change, Open Air Museums and the Open Access Seeds Revolution. My name is Anita Radini and I am a Wellcome Trust Research Fellow in Medical Humanities at the Department of Archaeology at the University of York in United Kingdom. This presentation tells what I can say a true story about our Textile Living Laboratories project based in northeast of England in Rydale. And the project has a website. I invite you to have a look at it. There is also another presentation for this conference. Gives you a little bit of a background and a bit more details about the project itself and how it came to be. So if you are interested, please head there and have a listen to that presentation. For now, what you need to know about the project TELS, this is how we call it shortly, is that we are Anita Radini, Mark Palmer, who is an expert in organic farming, and Simon Thomas, who is an expert in community engagement and green transport. We are based in Rydale, in the beautiful North Yorkshire Moors National Park, and we're growing flax and natural dye plants. For us, at this scale, is the very first time. And we're really interested in promoting organic farming in national parks. The aim of the project, I can summarize them in 4 core aims. The first one is to introduce and promote locally the support to a national effort towards a more sustainable fashion industry. When we talk about sustainability, we tend to think about a more sustainable food production. But if we want to live in a more sustainable society, we need to change every aspect of the way we relate with what we need to live. This includes clothes and objects in general. Fashion industry has a very negative, in the way it is today, it has a very negative environmental impact. Dyes used for textile, for example, are some of the most polluting things that people can put into the world. Another aim, 2 other aims strictly connected to each other are due to the fact that due to the mechanization of flax production after World War II, there has been almost a total loss of the ability to go from seed to fiber production in England and in many other areas in Europe. And as consequence of the disappearance of local flax field, there has been a very dangerous and very worrying loss of variety of flax for fibers. And finally, so we want to contribute to overcoming the loss of variety of flax. We are trying to grow seeds as well. And finally, our 4th core aim is to communicate to the public, involve the public in a better understanding of the scale of plant life needed to support humanity and the impact, obviously, that fashion has to our world. And so we are involving the local community in as much as possible, in particular in the harvest and processing of the flax for fiber. We have 2.5 acres of flax field for fibers and seeds, and we have a huge proportion of linseed compared to the variety for fiber itself, and this is exactly the subject of the presentation. We also have 0.5 acre of land in organic farming setting again, and these are mainly wood and weld. Here on the left you can see Mark, and on the right is Simon, and they are planting our seedling of wood. The core part of the presentation is something that really put me nearly off the project itself, and I was really shocked about what happened to us in what I can only define a true hunt for seeds. Seeds are extremely important for wildlife, for example, and for ourselves in general. We often tend to forget that in order to have a crop, you need to have the seeds of the crop first. This is true for flax as well. So we had absolutely no issue to find a field for our flax. In fact, we found two. We rented from a local organic farmer 2 acres of land, which are part of his organic farming rotation system. The soil was very chalky with some stones, but it was a good healthy soil, and we decided to go ahead. It was not straightforward, but we did manage to get the field for the flax. What surprised me very much was how actually hard it was to get the seeds. Initially, we aimed to sow between 80 to 100 kilograms of Lisette flax in our field. To obtain the density that we calculated was most appropriate to get a very tall fiber, because the closer the species are, the single plants are, the better, the longest is the fiber in theory. And we had no issue of finding seeds of dye plants such as woad and weld. That was absolutely easy. In fact, some of the seeds of weld were my own, which I picked from for a long time in my allotment. However, what surprised me very much is that we contacted all the main producers of seeds in Europe. First of all, we realized that there was nobody producing who was selling large quantity, for flax, for a proper cultivation of flax in England, nowhere to be found. But we could not also locate any of the few producers in Europe that could sell us seeds in the amount we needed. And I will tell you in a minute what happened. We therefore contacted a number of small growers in the UK and managed to put together with around 25 kilograms of Lisette variety of flax. But this is all we could get for our 2 acres in the entire United Kingdom and a little bit from EU. The result of this is that we had what I call a patchy crop. We decided to grow also linseed because it's similar to some extent, and for us, because it was our first year to grow crop at this scale, we decided that it was really important to try to get going and grow them anyway, and then maybe compare the fiber, although we know that linseed does not produce a viable fiber for us, the quality we needed. And on the picture on the left, you can see on the right of that picture, you can see the Lisette, and you can see that is nearly double as tall as the linseed that is on the left. The result of also these patches of various seeds donated to us or bought from very, very, very small seller is in the UK is that the crop also mature at different stages, and the seed growing was not, the germinability of the seeds was not actually optimal. We ended up with a little bit of patches, which it's okay as a first time, and we're really happy with it actually as a first experience at this scale. But obviously it will cause some issue in terms of practicalities at our best time, because we're going to end up with the crop that is not all mature at the same time. So what happened there? In order to understand how could it be possible that in the entire of United Kingdom and all the contact in Europe we had, we couldn't find seeds to sow and to cover only 2 acres of land. So in order for you to understand what happened there is, you need to know this, that the difference between F1 hybrids and open pollinated seeds. So the large-scale production of seeds for most economic plants is today controlled by very few seeds corporations. I think Monsanto is probably the most known. The majority of seeds produced are F1 hybrids resulting from prolonged inbreeding of 2 parent crops. The seeds from an F1 crop are weaker and weaker and weaker, which means that when you produce a seeds from your F1 hybrids, very often the seeds is either very different from the crop you have sown, or is not viable, is sterile. Only the corporation have the two parent crops and they are patented. This means that this large scale of patent F1 hybrid seeds have pushed farmers out of the business of producing their own seeds. And this is part of the result of the mechanization of agriculture after World War II. These hybrids present very reliable characteristics because of the inbreeding of the two parent crops. The F1 that results from them is very, very stable, and it germinates at a very constant rate and produce very stable characteristics. And this is something that can be considered good to some extent. However, this in-depth inbreeding of the parent crops means that there is a huge huge loss of genetic variability. At the opposite end, we have open pollinated seeds where this has not happened. They breed through and they can adapt, they evolve year after year to the environment they live in, generating effectively, implementing the genetic diversity and biodiversity of the seeds. Here there are two links of two organizations that are trying to overcome this issue of F1 hybrids, and they're really pushing forward the boundaries of open pollinated seeds. This is Seed Sovereignty and the UK Seed Cooperative. These are the one I know the best because I'm based in the United Kingdom, but there are a lot of local groups and a lot of cooperative, very, very small, that are actually trying to push forward the open pollinated seeds revolution. So why didn't we get our seeds? Because the flax seeds for fiber are likely many other crops are bred by very few producers in continental Europe. They grow at a large scale, a very limited amount of seeds, and in 2021 there was a very bad summer with floods and extreme weather events resulting in a very poor seed crop. So the system that is in place failed. And while they granted the seeds from their larger buyers and the customer that they regularly have, for the small customer like us, there was no seeds left. It was therefore not possible to fulfill the demand of the market to the point that we could not find sufficient seeds to cover 2 acres of land. And I found this incredibly worrying as a situation, and it's really serious and needs addressing. So we need to push forward the battle and the revolution of open seeds, open pollinated seeds variety. So why I believe that the role of open air museum is very important because open air museums have very often land available. So there is a patch of land where you can grow open pollinated variety of seeds. The skills to grow them are in-house, as many open air museums already grow their own crop. There is a general interest of the public in these things, I believe, and in general, there is an interest of the public that go and see open air museum. So there are huge educational potential. The worldwide network of open air museum makes knowledge shareable, and so we can really all work together to ensure that we contribute to the genetic diversity of both food and fiber crops. I think it's also contacts with local community of seed saver, heritage seed library and seed banks are actually very easy and possible, and even more for open air museum. So I really hope that the case of the Project TELS open the eyes to everybody. The situation, it's really critical, I think. If you're interested in seed saving, Seed Sovereignty now runs an online course, but there are others available. So thank you very much for your attention, and I hope that this presentation has opened a little bit your eye. There is a lot online about it, so please read and make your own mind about it, and wherever you can, please save seeds, because no sustainable revolution can do without them. Thank you.